So right here on the table in front of me is a bin that contains a host of titles. The one that I think is the most important, at least for the purpose of this video, is the X-Men run by Jim Lee. I actually purchased these books, many of these books, when they were originally coming out back in the 90s during my first stint in comics. And I came to the realization that I actually did not have a full run of this title assembled in the collection. So I have, a lot of my original books in here, a couple that I've picked up over the years, specifically like some newsstands. But I want to go into the 100K collection to see if I can assemble a full run of a title that's important to me. Right, I will tell you, Jim Lee is still one of my favorite artists to this day, probably because of the impression that he made upon me when I was reading this comic back in the day originally. So I have, of course, the bigger keys, if you will. So, X-Men issue number 4. Here's issue number 5. But then when you start getting into some of the later issues, that was 15, a couple of copies of that, we have some gaps, right? So I have like 24 and 23, and I have 20, right? And then it jumps to like 31. I think 32 is in here, right? So I have a couple of gaps, and the question is, can I close some of the gaps? How far can I actually go? That will be the project that I'm going to be working on. All right, so on the table here, I have 3 boxes that I've pulled down. Each one of them is labeled X-Men. One actually says X-Men 90s. That was actually my writing. But the original owner has designations on here on each one for X-Men, which I'm assuming is not Uncanny X-Men because I think he labeled those differently. But we're going to go ahead and dig in and see what it is that we have in these. Fingers crossed that it's going to be the title that I'm looking for, and hopefully the exact books that I'm looking for. All right, let's dig in. Let's see what we have. X-Men 243. Set it to the side real quick. There's X-Men 1. A couple of copies of 1, of course, which makes sense. Have, of course, all those. It's 3. 5. I think I pulled all the 4s out of here by now. It's 5, 6, okay, 19. So I just spent some time going through this bin right here, the back part of this. And basically what I found in there are some additional 90s X-Men related titles, like X-Men Unlimited was in there. So not the lower numbers that I actually need. It's some different titles. And then in the back of this bin are actually some higher numbers for volume 2. So 70s, 80s, 90s, and I think at least 100 was in this bin. I want to check these other 2 bins to see if some of the lower number volume 2 books are actually in there, because that's kind of what I want to work on. So we'll see what we find. The good news is that I did find a healthy number of volume 2 in this bin. So we'll see what is over there. All right, so I just found a run of X-Men Black Sun, and I am a Chris Claremont fan. So I'm actually going to pull out that run so that I can actually read it. So I have not done that. That's issue 1, issue 2, 3, 4, 2 4s, and 5 of 5. So that's the full run of that. I'm gonna give that a read, maybe tonight even. Put these in order and drop them back. I found a couple of X-Men Volume 2 in this bin. I'm going to get those sorted, and then I'm going to move on to this box over here. We are making progress, ladies and gentlemen. So some solid progress was indeed made. I managed to find a ton of really awesome books to complete this run, at least in my mind. I now have issues 1 through 41, and you might wonder why I stopped at 41. It is as good a place as any to wrap things up. I probably should have stopped at issue 40 because 40 is a cool cover, but 41 was right there, so I went ahead and grabbed that one. So the run, again, in my mind, is pretty much done at this point. Found multiple copies of a couple of books, so it was nice to find those, like that Rogue Gambit cover. Found several of those. I found a couple of other cool books as I was going through. Too many to actually show in great detail, but I do want to show you two. This is actually an ash can that I found. I've not seen this X-Men ash can before. I found multiple copies of another, but this is the first one that I found of this. I haven't even opened it up yet. But it's a cool ash can. Not sure what year it is, but it was cool to have found that. This other one is X-Men Unlimited issue number 47. This is a Josh Middleton cover. As soon as I spotted this one, I knew that I had seen this cover before. Did a quick search on it. Sure enough, it was a notable cover for him. Also notable is the color transfer down the spine of this one, but a cool book to have found. One of the other things that I was noodling as I was kind of wrapping up this hunt was whether I should do a must-have X-Men comics video like I've done for Punisher, like I've done for Jim Lee, Wolverine, Whilce Portacio, and I realized that I had already done an X-Men must-have, but it was X-Men villains. I haven't done, I don't think, a generic X-Men must-have. I'm not even sure, honestly, how I would do it just because of how many different titles, how many great comics out there that represent the X-Men. I'm not even sure how I would approach that. It might have to be a multi-part, kind of what I did for Wolverine and also for Spider-Man. But if that's something that you guys are interested in and seeing, let me know and I can start to noodle that. But with that said, we're going to wrap this video up. I want to thank you all for taking the time to watch. I hope that you enjoyed it. And if you did, be certain to give the video a thumbs up and to leave a comment or two behind. Take care.
This thing on? Mic check. I just want to make sure y'all can hear me clearly. Yo, should you practice art? Or should art be your practice? I had a question, so I asked it. Not to anyone specifically, but to my inner God, you know? The one that's gonna be a master. The one that's more than a rapper. The one that's an educator. The one that seeks enlightenment. He travels with concepts. He's got the mindset expansive. He understands that his time combined with travel and concepts makes his mind convex. Sort of like when you look at a brain scan. Straight off meditation, we was concaving until we had that eternal dialogue that created our dialect. Now we in distinct rooms of pure souls having them conversations. Synergy and combination.